Freedom, as one of the 5 preambles of the U.S. Constitution, is an American spirit, but in recent years, freedom has been undermined, distorted and even abused by the Trump administration. The United States has long preached academic freedom, claiming that everyone has equal access to education, but the recent actions of the U.S. government have shed the mask of academic freedom. The U.S. government's crackdown on Confucius Institutes escalated in August after the U.S. government required them to register as foreign missions. On September 1st, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo threatened in an interview with Fox that he wants all Confucius Institutes and U.S. universities to be closed by the end of this year. Not only that, but a day earlier, Pompeo said the Trump administration was considering a blanket ban on Chinese students studying in the United States, and hinted that new restrictions would be announced in the coming weeks or months. Many American university executives have spoken out against such blatant restrictions on international students based on nationality, not only because of the interests of the schools, but also because they have always attracted international students with the advantage of academic freedom. But America's open and inclusive academic freedom has thus been undermined by its politicians. Judicial independence is considered as a characteristic of American constitutionalism, which is intended to require judges to be free from external pressure when deciding factual and legal issues, but when it comes to its own interests, the U.S. government shows a different face. On September 2nd, the American government abruptly announced sanctions against 2 senior officials of the International Criminal Court and their relatives, citing the court's continuing investigation of American operations in Afghanistan. America, an advocate of judicial independence, has caused outrage by imposing such a high-profile sanction on the ICC's chief prosecutor just because the court is investigating it. In response, the court said the United States was interfering with the court's judicial and prosecutorial independence. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric also expressed concern about the decision, saying the Trump administration's twisted sanctions not only obstruct justice, but also ignore victims of war crimes and those seeking justice from the International Criminal Court. Where is freedom really in America? That must only exist in the White House, where the owner always gets his own way. With more than 25 million COVID-19 cases diagnosed globally, the U.S. government is going its own way by refusing to participate in an international vaccine program that already has more than 170 countries working together. Not only did the U.S. reject international cooperation, it also wayward withdrew from WHO and refused to pay its $80 million dues to the organization. The U.S. government not only treats the freedom and capriciousness of international organizations, but also uses surveillance to treat its people. On September 2nd, the U.S. courts finally said no to the U.S. government's rampant spying after an appeals court ruled that the NSA's indiscriminate collection of vast amounts of data about people's phone calls revealed by Edward Snowden may be unconstitutional. Many are already aware that the U.S. is becoming more liberal against a backdrop of President Trump's all-out push to push the U.S. towards extreme unilateralism. Unfortunately, this kind of transgression of freedom only brings loneliness. Ultimately, the Trump administration's actions reveal a deep sense of anxiety and insecurity. In order to achieve its own political interests, the Trump administration is willing to treat national affairs as a game, and the U.S. government will eventually suffer the consequences.